Hey, what's up, Herman? How you doing?
Well, Brian,
Eh,
good morning.
Yeah, hey man. You know, LA, it's a big time in LA right now. I mean, the fires just got under control, but God, man, if you're a sports fan in Los Angeles, man, we're just talking about Luka Doncic coming to the Lakers now. We had to trade
Yeah,
away
yeah,
street clothes, but yeah, we
yeah.
got
Street
Luka.
clothes. Yeah, yeah,
Man, that's interesting. Two very different players. I've seen Luka play live, man. That boy is just I mean, he's such a good player, but he's also like the slowest player I've ever seen play. Like
yeah,
that guy moves in slow motion, but somehow he still gets his shot off. He's a great player.
yeah. I think that's how we can all relate. We're not all in the best shape, and that guy can ball. And he's not super athletic, but once he goes out there, it gives everyone hope, man. So this
Mm-hmm.
guy's coming to play, international mega star, and now teamed up in a super city with great historical basketball. Um, Known for winning, and now this guy's coming here. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a good time for the Lakers. I think he's the future, and obviously Davis just was not working out. It worked out for what we needed him, got a
Yeah,
championship with that. Now it's the future. It's
yeah. I think
starting to-
I think those two players kind of illustrate two things that like you got to admit like if you were a sports like a sports psychologist on that team if like let's say the Lakers brought you on for like as like the mental health support because just for people who know like every NBA team has a sports psychologist or mental health professional, but I think the NBA dictates you got to have that. But you got Anthony Davis who he's already got the bubble ring, and I don't know if he plays as hard. But then you got Luka who is chasing it. The Mavericks, they're always contenders, right? But they're not quite there yet. And
yeah,
so I think guys like that tend to play harder because they're still striving for something. Because it's like some guys they even coast because they're like, well, I don't have an NBA championship ring, but I have the gold medal from the Olympics, right? Well, Luka, I mean, come on, man. He plays for Slovenia. They ain't gonna win no gold medal. Come on, let's get real. Unless they clone Luka, they got like fucking like 6 Lukas. And so I think he's gonna play hard. And sometimes, man, like and the Mavericks were a good organization, all that. I like Mark Cuban. I like Mark Cuban. I know he's not the owner anymore,
yeah,
but I like him. But let's be real, man. Sometimes, man, like you could be the greatest at what you do, but you might get complacent. You wake up on the same team. You're mentally you're just drained because you're like another season, another trip to the playoffs where we were bounced after the first round, right? There's got to be a part of Luka that feels that way, but he's just like, well, I go to the Lakers. One, it's a story, probably the most debatable, but probably the most famous franchise in the NBA. You come to LA, huge market, right? Like you got to imagine, like his agent is probably like, oh man, we got to get so many endorsements and stuff, right? So that's going to be good. You come in with a lot of just a lot of optimism, right? And then you're like, these guys are a proven winner. I get to be part of that winning culture, right? I get to be up there with like Magic and all of them, Kareem and Kobe, and so I feel I'm happy for him. I think he's gonna do good. I mean, I think he just went as far as he could go in Dallas. I mean, he had Kyrie, and they still couldn't win one. So I think coming here, question is how long's LeBron got, and so I don't know, man. I think it's a good move overall. I couldn't believe it happened, but
yeah.
damn,
There was a lot of talk about, man, did the these apps get hacked? All these news.
yeah,
Is this real? So there was a lot of people were in disbelief till it kept getting confirmed, from one source and another. So at first people were like, no way, this is a hack. Someone hacked these systems.
yeah. It was the Russians, the Chinese. But
Yeah,
I mean, I know it's like lesser known news, and I know a lot of people, a lot of men probably don't watch WNBA. Nah, that's a lie. Men do watch in WNBA. It's the women that don't watch the WNBA. But
yeah,
I don't know if people know this, but our LA Sparks just acquired Kelsey Plum from the Las Vegas Aces. And anyone who knows me knows Kelsey Plum is by far my favorite player in the WNBA. I like Caitlin Clark, man. She's phenomenal now. But as a former UW Husky, I got to give Kelsey Plum her flowers. She was like our best player at UW. Obviously not when I was there. She ain't that old, but like she was the Caitlin Clark before Caitlin Clark. She had the scoring record, you know. But unlike some of these other ladies who like were like Caitlin Clark haters, she was the first one there when Caitlin broke her record at Indiana. I think it was like she was cheering for her, like yeah, go for it, you know. And so this girl is like one of the better point guards in the league. She's a phenomenal 3-point shooter too. So I can't wait for her to come to the Sparks. Man, you gotta combine her now with that rookie last year, Cameron Brink. That girl's she's a shot blocker, man, but she can get into the paint. The Sparks are good because they were sorry, man. Ever since the Candace Parker, Lisa Leslie years, I know I was there for their first season. Hey man, if them getting Kelsey Plum and then the Lakers getting Luka, man, if both those teams make a deep playoff run, man, LA basketball fans are gonna be happy, man, because you know LA, man, we love a winner. Let's just be real about that. Look at the Rams win a Super Bowl, but nobody cares anymore because it's like, what have you done for me lately, right? It's like the old Janet Jackson song. But well, actually, though, speaking of the Rams and LA football, man, my boy Pete Carroll is it is hooked up with your Las Vegas Raiders, which I know in your mind is still like the Los Angeles Raiders. Raiders are they're gonna own LA again, man. What do you think about that?
I think people are gonna start making that 3.5 hour drive from here and catch some more games. I think Pete brings excitement, some stability, and for a franchise that's been down for the last 20 years since their last Super Bowl appearance. And Pete is the youngest old guy I know.
Yeah.
I've seen at least, right? This guy is like, there's no, he's got a young heart and he's got, that winning spirit and he wants to go out there and get it. And I've seen some of his interviews and, he looks refreshed and he's ready to go.
I mean, the last time this happened to Pete, where he had to take a year off from the Patriots, look, because I've read his book, and for people who want a good motivational book about how to tackle life, read Pete Carroll's book. I mean, it is phenomenal. It's a short read. He gets to the point, but he talks about how he was down and out because people think that he was just a straight up loser when he was with the Jets and the Patriots. No, he took them to the playoffs like more often than not. It's just that people are like, well, he didn't win a Super Bowl, And plus, I think the other thing was they look at, well, every time Bill Belichick is the guy that came in to replace him, you see? And so if you're the guy before Belichick, people are always going to be like, oh, well, but then look what happened. He took the year off. And this is important for men that are listening right now about how to align your goals and develop your philosophy in life. He took that time to develop his philosophy because his mindset was like, I know football because he's a defensive mind. He knows football, but I got to get these men to want to play for me. They got to understand the vision. He literally took that whole year to develop his philosophy that goes, he's basically just got like 3 rules there. It's like be early, protect the team. And I think it was the other one was like, I believe it was protect the football. I think that was, but it's really basic stuff. And he developed that. And then look what happened at USC, right? I remember you're the one that told me how like during that time, there's a drought in LA. There's no NFL. They'd all left to Oakland and St. Louis. And then the Trojans started killing teams and filling up the Coliseum. And it was just this cultural phenomenon. Yeah, I mean, and like he saw, and then recruiting, he was really good at recruiting. You hear stories like even Adrian Peterson said he was this close to going SC because Pete went to visit him, and he's just like, they're like, oh, AP, someone's here to see you, and he's like, where? He's like, oh, he's on the basketball court. And he goes out, he sees Pete just shooting hoops, he's like, hey, Adrian, and he was just like, oh, he was this close, and imagine how that would have been, right? But yeah, it's just he's a good recruiter, and I think I got to give Tom Brady some credit because he played against Pete a lot. Everybody remembers the Super Bowl where they beat my Seahawks, but I want to say every non-Super Bowl game, I want to see the Seahawks beat the Patriots. So Tom knows what he's up against, and so I think that was the perfect hire. The Raiders need a culture. I mean, as we know, Vegas were like just for young athletes out there, and I think like they'll never say it out loud till they retire, but like where you get drafted to matters. Like it's good and bad. Like if you get drafted to Buffalo, New York, you ain't got nothing to do. It just snows all the time. There's like an Applebee's there, but there's no clubs. There's none of that. So you're gonna be bored to death, but you're not gonna blow your money. But then you go to Miami, you go to LA, you go to Vegas, especially Vegas. Vegas is a city never sleeps, man. And New York, yeah, lots of ways to go broke and lots of ways to get into trouble. Like, man, your boy Henry Ruggs, right? I mean, look what happened to that poor kid, man. Young dude, kills a guy, man, made a bad decision. But Pete can I think Pete will get these guys in line, though. He'll get them in line without them feeling like they lost themselves, I think, because look at the guys he's had: Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman. He never censored them, but they became more responsible guys.
Yeah, I think it's accountability. He's going to hold them accountable and make sure they're there to do what they're getting paid to do. And I know they got a life after, after they're off the clock. They still have responsibility. And I think that's going to be his key to remind them of that accountability that they need to respond to.
Yeah, no, for sure, and that's huge for young men these days and athletes. Like, see, people forget, man. Like these guys, like sometimes we got to think back to when we were like 21, 22 years old, right? And let's say you're that age, and then suddenly you got $4 million in the bank as like a signing bonus or guaranteed money, right? I don't know about you, man. I had a good upbringing. My parents, they taught me right from wrong and all that. And I went to school, with all that. But even I have to acknowledge, I would have bought some stupid shit, man. I would have bought some stupid shit. I would have bought stupid shit for my friends because I feel like I owe them for being my buddy or whatever. I would have bailed out all of my family, and then I'd be broke, right? Yeah. I would be dead ass broke, like a lot of these athletes. And again, that's me trying to be humble, acknowledging that I had advantages in life that I have to acknowledge. I had mom and dad in the picture. I had my grandma in the picture. And I had a more traditional upbringing, but yet I have to admit that temptation would have gotten me. And then you throw me in a city like Las Vegas, man. I'm honest enough to admit during that stage of my life, I was like 22 years old. Some beautiful girl gave me a wink and a smile, and she fills out a cocktail dress really well. Man, I would need my boys to jump in and be like, dude, no, it's a honey trap, no. But some of these guys don't have that, man. They got an entourage that's always like, oh, you're the best. They're not holding them accountable. Pete preaches that accountability. So I think that'll be good for these players. And I'm sure he's going to bring in some veteran guys too, like he did a free agency with the Seahawks. And I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see it. And it's like you've pointed out to me before about, I know you're the biggest Raiders fan I know. And I remember you used to drive up to Oakland, right, to their games. And then you're like, Vegas, nobody was happier than you. You're like, dude, it's like three hours away. Versus that 6 hours. But then you got Vegas. You got to watch the game, but the day before you just chill, hit the casinos or whatever, do all that fun stuff. This is a win-win, man. Right. And so, I haven't been to the new stadium yet, but it looks good, man. So
yeah, it's gonna be a good year. Obviously, we're not gonna say Super Bowl contenders, but I think it's a good start for a foundation, and teaching these guys how to win is important. I think changing that mindset is gonna be key. So
I think I have to point out something that I've observed for years when it comes to like football fan bases and the mental hurdles that fans got to go through. And I always use you Raiders fans as a contrast to Cowboys fans, because I consider Raiders and Cowboys fans to be among some of the most passionate and loyal fan bases, because both you guys and Cowboys fans, you stick with your team through thick and thin. The big separation is Raiders fans aren't delusional. They're always like, the new season starts, they're like, yeah, we ain't making the playoffs, but I think we're going to get some good guys in the draft. We're going to whiff on some drafts. We're probably going to break even in our record. Dallas fans are the opposite. This is our year, bro. We're going all the way. It's like, and they never go all the way. This ain't 1994 anymore, right? They haven't kept up with the times, but their fan bases are still. It's like they think Troy Aikman is still under center and still throwing to Michael Irvin, right? Like those days are gone, man. Emmitt Smith ain't taking up the middle no more, man. These guys are gone. Deion Sanders ain't covering for you no more, man. It's just like a little bit of delusion there. But I don't know. But the Raiders faithful, man, they show up, and every year you can't say you guys are disappointed because you finish exactly how you guys think you're going to finish, and you just pray that Mark Davis brings in some help, which he did. He got the greatest of all time. He got Brady, and yeah, and so it shows me they can grow. But yeah, them Dallas fans, I tell you, man, there's something else. I know a few of them, and they just, I, I don't know, man. They're not living in our reality. Maybe in some alternate reality, the Cowboys are like multi-time Super Bowl winners since the '90s, and their mind drifts to that alternate reality. But in this one, nah, man. Jerry Jones is still there, and nah.
They're probably addicted to that Madden game, and they want
Yeah.
and they think that's going to be reality. Yeah, you know, it's I think that's a perfect example of trying to be positive but not real. Two different things: reality and positivity, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just not aligning there. So I'm very interested.
It's like it illustrates the point. For example, like sometimes people like men always talk about like confidence, but there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right?
Yeah.
And just like there's being optimistic and positive, like you're talking about, and being downright delusional. And yeah, I mean, it's just some fan bases represent some people's mentalities, right? Where it's like that lottery winner mentality where you think like you're down to your last $20, and do you buy food or do you buy a lottery ticket? And they just buy a lottery ticket, and then they go hungry because they think that's what that's what it takes. I'm gonna win. But that's lacks discipline and lacks like this groundedness, and I think that's what we try to help men in therapy with, right? Just being realistic, being grounded, focusing on things that you can control, right? Instead of focusing on shit outside of your control that's somehow going to give you this golden ticket to life, right? And I don't know about you, man, but that whole aspect of control and all that, maybe it's a good segue because, man, we can't not talk about what's going on in the U.S. right now with the new president, with President Trump. Just it's like a couple of days in office, and he signed a ton of executive orders, some that don't affect most people, some that affect a lot of people directly. And I don't know, man. There's been a lot of fear. I think you and I have both kind of heard it from some of our colleagues in our field. It affects people differently. With like, for example, like the raids that ICE has been doing, and that you see on the news, and maybe now and then you might know a person who knows a person who witnessed a raid or something like that. But man, what's been your observations and thoughts on just that issue alone? Let's just start there, like with ICE.
I mean, it like you said, it's based on fear. I think a lot of these things are not new. It's been going on since I've been in this country. Yes, when the media's all over it, yes, it seems very drastic, but the reality is it's things that people have been facing for many years. So, is it easy to swallow? No, it's not. It's difficult to see some people being detained and being taken into custody. And I know they have families, and some of them are maybe not committing the crimes, but it's a very tough time for everyone. And I think um, some people are making it worse just by the continued coverage of every little detail, and some of the some of what we're seeing is just not um there's not much we can do on certain levels. We can support, we can talk to people, we can have the discussion, but there's certain things that the law's the law, and sometimes we all want the law to be bent, but unfortunately right now this new administration is really enforcing what's been there on the books for a long time.
I approach this two different ways. One, in the present, look, man, sometimes in life, even if you don't fully understand or can't relate to a certain thing that people are going through, I don't think it's hard for a clinician to hold space and empathize for someone who's going through some stuff, whether they're directly affected or indirectly affected, and to just be there for them and to hear out their frustrations, their feelings on the matter, right? To try to comfort them. But I think the hallmark of our style of doing therapy, we take a very solutions focused approach.
Yeah.
Is we hold space, we validate them, and because they deserve that. But then what, right? Then what? It's like you gotta be able to, if, as a person, you gotta be able to have some hope that your life will go on. You gotta do something instead of just moping around and just like feeling helpless, because that's just gonna take you down this cycle of like anxiety, because you feel like, what's the point? I can't do anything, right? And I think it's important to give people this idea of, well, let's learn from this too, because I don't want my clients to go through those same feelings again. I know they're going to, but at least I want them to have coping skills. I want them to have some sense of agency. This idea that I can do something about how I feel next time. Because it's like I always say to people, man, like shit happens around me, but at the end of the day, I am not going to be the one left without a chair when the music stops. Okay.
Right.
I'm always going to have a card up my sleeve. I'm always going to have a card to play. And I think that's how people should live life. They should have contingency plans. And it's like I don't want to dive into the politics of it, man. We're not poli-sci graduate students, right, or nothing. We don't do that crap. But I look at life and I see that the people that are most prepared are the ones that flourish. You got people who, like, let's say they play the financial markets. Look, nobody can predict the future, but if you know enough and you're skilled enough at what you focus on, that's the next best thing. Then you can focus on, well, where are the next big companies that are going to rise, right? Like if you're one of those guys that predicted AI and all that, you're probably doing really good. If you're one of those people that like early on during a couple of years ago bet on nuclear energy, you're probably pretty good, right? And so it's those things where that should be rewarded. Your ability to kind of look into the future in a certain sense as it affects you. Or let's say you're one of those people that's in college right now, but you're studying something but something doesn't feel right. And so maybe you talk to your counselors, right? Your academic counselors, and you're like, is my job going to be around? Like, or I'm sorry, my major, if I got a job in this, is it going to be around in 10 years? Or am I studying something obsolete? And it might be your counselor's like, actually, your job's going to get automated away, son. You might want to switch. That is going to be a life-changing moment for that like 20-year-old student or something, right? And they're going to be like, they're like, all right, let me course correct. It might tack on another year in college, I don't know. But 1 year versus the rest of your life, that's huge. So that should be rewarded. Now, likewise, man, I don't care if you were born in this country, you immigrated to this country, you came here, less than legal means, let's just say. But either way, you're here. Either way, this is your country now. You got to be on top of what's happening, so nothing takes you by surprise. And like I get it, man. Sometimes it's hard, man. Like if you're a parent, right, and you have a teenage son, let's say, that's like, F this, my English ain't great, but selling drugs is sure easy, right? And then that's the path you take now, because you do that, and especially in LA in the last few years, you're not getting arrested. And it's no slight against our police. It's not their problem, not their fault, because certain districts, the DA was not prosecuting certain crimes, and California, LA in particular, became kind of this joke for the rest of the country where you could steal and nothing happens. But that merry-go-round came to an end. And you had a lot of criminals that were getting caught, and they were like, what? Why? How did this happen? It's like, well, people got tired of Yeah, yeah, people got tired of getting their stuff jacked, and they voted, and that's the great thing about this country. Like every vote matters, and the people spoke. And so it's like it's funny when I hear mobsters, old school mobsters in interviews talk about like how they feel about judges, the law, and the cops. And they're like, "Do you hate them?" They're like, we don't hate the cops. They're like, why? They're like, what's a game? It's like cops and robbers. You learn when you play. Like, your job is to commit crimes. Their job is to catch you. And then when they catch you, you're just like, okay, well, I did get away with it a lot. And so it was bound to happen. So you don't get mad at them because they're just like, well, I committed a crime. I knew I was doing wrong, but I was getting rich. Whereas now it's like, well, how did this happen? It's like this. I want to say lack of accountability, but it's also this idea that if it's like if everyone's doing it, how is it bad? See, so I feel bad for those parents of the kids that get hauled off and probably going to get deported.
Mm.
And I feel really bad for the families if they get deported too, because if the law says, well, you're harboring this kid, it was like, well, the kid's my 16-year-old son, though. Am I harboring him or am I just keeping him, taking care of him? So I feel bad for them, man, for sure. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, man, you brought up a few good points there. I think, number one, you started some of the, when you go to your college counselor and you kind of want to dictate the future, where you're going to put your career, it's about identifying and paying attention what's now and what's the future, right? Like you said, AI, a lot of jobs are going to be automated in the future. And it's about informing yourself and making sure, hey, is this worth paying 80,000, 50,000, whatever the degree costs, right? Because am I gonna job? And this is a conversation I have with many people. Um, is you have to pay attention to the market. What is it that I'm gonna do? Is this gonna be viable? Do I go learn to be a regular mechanic or a electrical engineer mechanic with the cars of the future, Tesla, Rivian, all these electronic cars, right? Or do I learn how to change oil on a car where that might become something that's not going to be there in 50, 100 years, So it's about understanding where we're headed as a country and not just individual states or city. And I think that's sometimes where we get lost, or at least our youth don't think about. They just think about their environment where they live and they think that's going to dictate, and everything that's happening in there is how they're going to make decisions instead of um, taking a wider look, a broader, you know, view of life and what's going on in the world. Because now with globalization, I think that robot created in China this week
Right.
just killed the markets, and it just made a lot of people lose money, and but something new, and that seems to where we're headed, just like computers, internet, when all that people thought it was a fad as well, and it's just going to be here for a little bit, and look at what that did to a lot of jobs. So
Yep.
it's always about I think trying to be involved and be able to like you said, we can't predict, but we can definitely make an informed decision, have a good idea of where the future is taking us. So if we want to be resistant and be like, hey, I'm not gonna accept AI. I don't need that AI in my life. You know, maybe, but a lot of people. I remember teachers when I was in the '90s in high school who were against the internet and were refusing to be part of it, and
Yeah.
computers and all. And they're like, I'm not gonna go to the, and they just got lost, right? They got left behind. So
Yeah.
I think we're in one of those moments again in history where there's a big change coming, and those that go with the flow or understand where we're headed are going to be, like you said, prepare themselves better for the future. Now, as far as immigrations and some of these youth getting in trouble, my thing is, I think sometimes coming from an immigrant family, I think what we lose sometimes is the message to give to our kids. The reason why we immigrated here, the reason why we came to this country, and the reason we're here. And I think people get in this situation where they get into a comfortable life. They have things they need. They have the safety, they live in a decent home, they have decent jobs, but then they forget what the mission and the purpose was. And I think that's not being preached out to some of their kids. And that's where these kids get this confusion, and now they're stuck in limbo if they're not legally here, where they might be sent back to a country they don't remember that well, or something that's just behind them. So it's very difficult. And like I said, I have family, I have friends who is being impacted by some of these things. But I have these conversations with them, like, and a lot of them tell me, like, I came here with the goal to make X amount of money and leave, buy a house, buy cars, start a business, have enough money. But then when they get here, it's like, oh, well, I love this country, I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
But then again, they're not in the process of becoming legally, and they've been here 10, 20 years now. So it's difficult.
Yeah.
They're stuck.
Yeah, no, you're right, man, because it's a hell of a thing to one day find yourself on a deportation bus or plane
Yeah,
or whatever to a country where you ain't been since you were like 5 years old,
yeah,
right? And there's little things like as you know, I know, like um people who don't speak a foreign language don't understand this, but like just because like see you speak Spanish, I speak Vietnamese, but when I go, so I don't know what you, but when I go back to Vietnam, um, they know immediately that I'm American because I don't have a regional dialect, right? And that's fine when you're a tourist, right? But if I get deported out there, then now I got to start getting a job and shit. They'll be like, then it's a little bit different because I just because sometimes you speak the language doesn't mean like you fully understand the culture, right? Just like Vietnamese Americans and Vietnamese, the only thing we have in common really is our appearance, right? Um, I don't follow like the same types of like beliefs that they do out there. I mean, we're a capitalist country, they're a communist country, you know what I mean? Things like that. Like there's that story of like that poor Korean fella, man, that was like one of those ones that were like during what is it like the 80s and all that was it Sally Struthers, and like people were like donate or were adopting kids from like Asian countries and stuff like they were like freaking pets and shit, and they bring them here but they didn't know how to raise these kids, and then they get into all sorts of trouble, and this fella, I don't even think he spoke Korean because he came here when he was like one, I think, and then he got into like a life of crime, and then they deported him, but then he took his own life because he's like, I don't know anything about Korea. They deported him because the
yeah,
adoptive parents gave him up, and they like I think didn't sign some of the paperwork right or something like that. This guy was already like I think I want to say he might have been like almost 30 or something.
yeah.
And what's he gonna do? And like and so he doesn't belong here. He doesn't belong there.
Right.
That's rough, man.
Yeah. And you make a good point. I think if when you talk about immigration, at least here in LA, you think it's Mexican, Salvadorian, Honduran, but the reality is there's people here from all over the world, and not everyone's legal. So, it's not just everyone's thinking it's a Mexico, it's a Central America, South America issue, but it's not. And a lot of people are going to be faced with this reality if they get sent back, where they're going to be in the twilight zone, where I don't belong here, and it's going to be difficult, and it's a challenge, and it's been going on. I think um, this is kind of what happened in the '90s, where they started deporting most people, and that's what caused a lot of the street gangs to grow in Central America, and and the country didn't have the resources to absorb all those people, and a lot of the gang members that were deported had a system they had learned here, and the police and the government had no clue on how to deal with it, and it became a big problem. So who knows? I think as this administration wants to clean up this country, it's going to probably impact some of the countries in a very negative way, financially, and also socially, for the people that go out there and have to find a new way of living.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I it shows how powerful identity is, but then when identity is taken away from you, then it's
Yeah,
a big deal because I mean, actually, loss of identity is one of the five core fears of anxiety, and if your identity is as an American, because given an example of something you said earlier, let's say you're a person who's been here like 20 years, you just don't have legal documentation or whatever, but then suddenly you're plucked out of your American lifestyle. and then you throw them back to a country you haven't been for 2 decades.
Yeah.
Like, we have to acknowledge those countries are different. You know, my family's been trying to get me to visit Vietnam again. It's been 10 years since I've been there,
Yeah.
and they're telling me, no, it's changed a lot. And I think about it, and because I see their pictures or videos from when they go, I'm like, yeah, actually, it has changed a lot, right? And so I have to acknowledge that. But then that's just me thinking as a tourist, though, right?
Right.
It's like, and then you think, like, yeah, like, how's it changed 20 years? But now I got to live there, right?
Right.
The people have changed. It's a different generation now, too. It's like, dude, the economics of it too. Like, maybe some countries become more developed. Maybe sometimes there's like a slight regime change or something too. Like, if you're like from Thailand, I mean, geez, don't they have regime changes? Like, like, you got to be feared that the military will take over and all that. So a lot of things to get used to and unpack. And that's huge. That's huge, man. I mean, like, I would say the opposite of that in some ways is like where you have 100% control is like those American expats that move to different countries, right? And to retire, or not even to retire, but just to live, right?
Right.
Because maybe they have jobs or careers where it's not conventional. Like, maybe they're entrepreneurs and they can travel, do whatever, and they can live in like Puerto Rico. They can live in Thailand. They can live in wherever they want, right? Good for them. Good for them. But they have that control of their life.
Right.
They have that control. Well, that, and they have money. So money gives you control. I know people say money doesn't get you happiness, but the things that can get you make you happy. So let's just be real about that. So, yeah, man. I mean, I think there's going to be more to come with this administration and all that, and people just got to be ready, man.
Yeah, I think, immigration is just there. You can see it, but there's other stuff, that this administration is doing that, we're not seeing and maybe
Mm-hmm.
not paying as much attention to, but this is one of his campaign promises. So he's got to feed his voters. And, that's just how it is. Let's just be real. It's just like in the previous administration, they had to comply to their voters. And, they passed a lot of laws, and because people who voted for them wanted certain laws, certain changes, right? So
Yeah.
that's how it is. Like you're one who mentions this a lot. Every 4 years, um, half the country is happy, half the country is sad, and here we are, 4 years later. Right
Yeah.
now, we're going through the same thing.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Like, speaking of like happiness and unhappiness, it's like, so I think we gave pretty solid examples of like people who are if they're directly affected by some of these things that this new administration's done in just the first month, actually less than a month, just 2 weeks,
Right.
as of this episode. But have you encountered people, right, where, you and I, as clinicians, we both, I think it's fair to say that we value empathy. Empathy is a good thing. But have you encountered people who maybe they empathize too much, where they cross over and now it becomes like this vicarious trauma? Have you encountered that?
Oh, a lot, man, a lot. I see that a lot with people, and one thing is to be supportive, and be understanding and be helpful with people. But another is when you have people crying and like just going crazy over things that really isn't impacting them directly. I think, you know, it's good to have that support with them, right? And then to side with you. But another is to be like, man, this is really instant impacting you, as it is me, or as it is my neighbor, as it is my siblings. And it just doesn't feel real sometimes, to be honest with you. So I think people are just generally just want to be upset because what's out in the media or what's going on, and they just want to feel like part of it, and it's impacting them in a way that it shouldn't.
I agree, man. It's a beautiful thing when, let's say, you're not impacted by something that's negatively impacting people around you, particularly people you care about. And I think the best thing you can do is just hold space for them. That's a lesson that an old colleague of mine once taught me about. Just like, be there for them, be present, but just shut the fuck up and let them kind
Right.
of just air out how they feel. Just listen,
Right.
and respect their truth, respect what they are going through, and just be there for them. And
Right.
but it's not your war. I mean, it's your
Yeah.
place to listen to them. You know?
Yeah. Because just put yourself in their shoes, right? If they came to you as a therapist for you to, as you know, looking for a therapist or even a friend, they come and confide in you and they talk to you about their fear, uh, being deported, what's going on. They're scared. They're not sure what they're going to do. They don't know if they should send their kids to school. They don't know if they should go to work. They don't, they're in this, and then you start crying. What message are you sending them? Like how helpful is that when you're pretty much telling them, yeah, man, your life is screwed, man. Good luck, because I don't know what that's
Yeah,
kind of.
you're right about that, because that reminds me of a situation that happened. I know I shared with you a while back about I I was at work. I was going to work but I had a funeral, unfortunately, to go to. An aunt of mine had passed away, and she was battling illness, and she had passed. And but I didn't take the day off. Right, I went straight back to work in the afternoon. But I went straight from the funeral, so I was wearing all black, and so clearly you could tell like I was coming from somewhere, right? And one of the employees was just like saw me in my office, and she was like, "Hey, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." She's like, "Wow, you're dressing like a little weird today." I was like, "Well, I just went to a funeral. I'm not actually cosplaying as Johnny Cash, you know." And she's like, "Oh no, what happened?" I said, "Well, my aunt had passed," and as I'm telling the story, she starts crying. She starts crying uncontrollably. She's like, "Oh my God, it's so sad. I can't believe she passed." She starts talking like she knows my aunt, right? And and I'm like, I gotta give her a hug. I'm like, "Hey, it's okay." I got a pat her on the back, and she's drenching my jacket with tears, right? And I get her a Kleenex. I'm like, "It's okay, man. People get ill, they pass away, and we gotta and we got to cherish them, and we got to remember how they lived and how happy they made us." And I'm like, what the fuck am I telling this woman for? She didn't even know my aunt, but she's sobbing uncontrollably, and it's my aunt that passed away. And I gotta comfort this woman. And then she leaves. She's like, "Thank you, Bryan. I needed that. Thank you." And I was like, the fuck? Okay. What kind of universe am I living in? Where her empathy like completely was so much stronger than my feelings of loss. And I was like, am I not grieving enough?
Yeah.
It was so weird, man. I mean, she leaves because it's always weird when someone leaves your office crying, because I don't want people to think like I made her cry, but kind of. And so that was just the weirdest, like,
Yeah.
like me having to comfort someone ever, man. Oh, that was an odd experience, but yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's going on now. We have a lot of people who are, not being impacted directly, but they're taking that approach. Whether, and I would say it'd be best if you listen and maybe help them game plan. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe you should avoid these things. Maybe don't expose yourself. Definitely tell people don't drinking and driving right now is not the best
Mm,
scenario to work. I know a lot of my friends and grown guys that do that a lot. So that's kind of my feedback to them right now. Hey, you need to chill out on some of the things you're doing, man, because you're exposing yourself, and this can be hurtful down the line for you. So, but yeah, I can't be crying because they'd be think I'm faking it, because they'd be like, "You're legal here. You're a citizen. If I started crying and said, "Oh God," it I don't know, they would not take it well from me if
right.
I would, you know that.
Well, what you're describing though, right, is like I've always said, there's a fine line between like for like white people, and let's just be real, it's mostly unfortunately white women that I think most minorities encounter this from, like this white guilt of
Yeah,
like, oh my God, I can't believe my ancestors did this. It's so grimy.
right.
But the step from white guilt to white savior
Mhm.
is you're one bad decision. You're one bad statement away from
Yeah,
becoming the white savior, where the very colonizer mentality that you claim to be trying to undo, you become that, where
yeah,
you listen, but then suddenly the voice of the minority you're talking to falls into the background, where it's just like, I know what's best for you.
yeah.
Gee, you know who said that? a couple of 100 years ago, it was the colonizers who were like, we know what's best for you, you know? And the only difference is now these guys feel they're doing the right thing. They're like, I'm just trying to help you, you know? Like if like when they hijack like a protest or something like that, or they try to, I don't know about you, but I've been told by white people how to be Asian. And I was like, wow, okay, thank you for that. Okay.
Well, they take it and make it about themselves, and that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
It's not about, it's about, if you want to listen and you want to be helpful, be that. Listen and help, but don't make it about you where now you're gonna be, oh well, I don't know who I'm gonna hang out with. I don't know who's gonna clean my house now. Who's gonna wash my car.
Right.
What good does that do, right? It's more
Yeah.
about listening and understanding and being helpful in different areas and being supportive, and maybe someone just wants to talk to you about how they're feeling. They don't want to hear your judgment. They don't want to hear because literally people know it's not going to impact you. And if they're talking to you about it, it's about listening and being able to have a conversation, but not making it about you, because then we have that scenario with you and your employee who cried all over. She didn't know you're at. She didn't, and you call in and
She
and
she hijacked my grief is what she did.
exactly. So I think we have to be careful with scenarios like that, because that's what's going on right now in LA. It's an interesting time. We have this whole ICE thing and the legal situation, and then we just got through these wildfires that's also has a negative impact in the community. And there's a lot of talk about um, land grabs or people trying to buy
Right.
their homes or whatever, and and it's a big year. 2025 here in California is big, um, especially here in the LA area, where I don't know which route we're gonna go, because the state in 2000, the market crashed. It was because people stopped paying their taxes when all these houses started getting repossessed and taken away. And now we got most of these homes that got burnt down, or the majority of Palisades areas, high tax homes, right, where they
Yeah.
pay high taxes, and if they don't rebuild and they don't come back, what's going to happen? There's that loss of income for the city,
Yeah.
and there's a loss of community, and there's loss of employment. So it's a very difficult time in Los Angeles right now.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, but wasn't it like, was it last year, the year before? It was in Hawaii, right? Maui.
Yeah,
A lot of
right.
people lost their homes there, and I think that was one of the times I remember though where the public kind of like there was a little bit of backlash because you had a bunch of rich people
Yeah,
telling Americans to donate to other rich people, right?
right, right,
And I remember
right.
Oprah caught some flack for that because didn't she own some land out there and all that? Um,
Dwayne The Rock, I think her and The Rock.
Yeah. Well, see, I give The Rock a pass on that one because I know he grew up in Hawaii. That's why he's got all those like tribal tats, and he's really connected to the Hawaii, like the islander population out there. And I know it affected him. That's his family's there and all that. It goes back to when he was poor and they lived out there, and so I give The Rock a pass on that one. But like some of the other wealthy people, because man, I only know Hawaii as being a tourist, and shit is expensive there. But I also know people who live there, and let me tell you, man, groceries are freaking pricey out there, man. I mean, for a while, I don't know if you know this, but like there was this generational thing where a lot of teachers were retiring, and so Hawaii needed to recruit teachers, young teachers, and so they were like offering incentives and all this. But the problem is the salary was not terrible when you compare it to, like, let's say California, but it didn't keep up with the cost of living. You, it's enticing if you're like, let's say you're from a rural area, you're like, oh my god, a teacher's in Hawaii makes that much, but you got to factor in cost of living, the cost of goods, cost of rent. And then I did
Right.
the math because I have a buddy out there, one of my better friends, and he's always trying to get me to move to Hawaii, man. And I was like, man, I can't move because I was like, he's the one to send me that link, and I was like, I can't move out there for the amount of money that they're trying to pay. Like I'd have to have two jobs, man. I'd have to subject myself to medical testing or something on the side to be able to afford even a studio apartment. right?
Yeah.
Man, hell no, I ain't gonna be able to do that. Um, so yeah, I definitely feel for the people in Maui and all that. Like, it's expensive. Then you lose your home. It's like now you got nothing, man. In an island where shit doesn't come easy, man. You know, you order something on Amazon in Hawaii, it don't get there in 2 days, right? You know, you don't get there in 2 days.
2 weeks, 2 months.
I mean, the only way for it to get there faster if you get like freaking a Colombian smugglers to get it in there for you. You know, that's about it, man. Get those
Narcos.
speedboats. Yeah, the subs. Yeah. And so, yeah, man, so I feel, look, man, anyone who's been impacted, I don't care if you're rich or poor, man, you lose your home, you lose your home. And you know who I really feel bad for is the kids. You have children. Because I'm gonna try to be optimistic for a second here. Let's say you're wealthy, you lost your home, but I'm gonna be optimistic and say that if you're a wealthy, let's say you're the husband in that household, you have kids and your wife, man, I gotta give you some credit to say, like, man, if you built this life for your family, you built this amazing life, you have a nice home and all that, I have to believe that you still have it in you to recreate that life. Now, let's just, I mean, hopefully insurance will help you out, but although I know there was a controversy with that, but like, you have strengths that got you to the dance, and I would really hope those people use those same skills to rebuild. But it's the kids I feel bad because that's traumatic, man.
Yeah, it is, and I think this time is gonna be remembered because it's gonna make a big change in the Los Angeles community because how it gets rebuilt. A lot of
Yeah.
people are talking about smart cities for the Olympic, this and that. But
Yeah.
then also, there's a lot of people who are older who don't have the time to rebuild, who don't
Mm-hmm.
have 10 years, five, who are maybe retired, living comfortably, and, therefore on a fixed income. And now these people don't have a home. So
Yeah.
only going to drive the rents for LA citizens even more. And a lot of people are probably going to be forced to leave the
Yeah.
state because, they don't have the time. They either move to Arizona, one of these places and take the money and they might just run with it. So, um, it's a big impact, and I think it's going to impact us all. Definitely, we're all going to be. I just got my car insurance renewal, and it's a lot more than what I usually pay. I haven't had no accidents in over 10 years, so um, yeah, we're all going to feel the pain. I'll tell you that. So, just like you said, the cost of living in Hawaii, we're going to face that here. I mean,
Yeah.
just look at the egg shortage, what that does, right? You've seen the
Right.
prices. I was surprised when I went the other day, and I was like, I had to double take. I was like, what the hell is that? Like, is that real? Are these like super organic or what's going on here? But
Yeah.
you know, yeah, we're gonna face some challenges. I think we're gonna have some tough times ahead here in Los Angeles. With like I said, with our administration that's impacting us, and then definitely the wildfires. I think that impact from the wildfires are gonna hurt us more than whatever the administration is doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad, and you know, this is where I feel for people who like haven't quite got their footing as full on providers. Let's say you're like a parent. Let's say you're a single parent. You got to work two jobs, um, and you don't have that semblance of control, right? Because if you got to work two jobs, then it's probably fair to say both those jobs probably don't pay that much, right? Um, and you got to rely on the governor. You got to rely on federal policies to help you out. I feel bad, man, for people like that because hell, I was a person like that, right? It's not like, you know, you and I, man, we go back a ways, and we remember a time when like we were making that much money at all. We were just like wage earners, trying to make our way up. But we do that by what? Reputation, education, just garner experience, and you level up in life, right? And that was us actually during 2008. You brought that up, you know, and that impacted a lot of people. Um,
Right.
but I think that the thing is, what I want for a lot of people is if you're going through that now, man, strive to work yourself out of that dependence. right?
Right.
It's like, right, like that's the idea, right, behind like Section 8 and all that. Like you're supposed to use it as relief, and then you find a way out of it. Now, unfortunately, as we've witnessed in our career, doesn't work out that way.
Right.
It doesn't make people necessarily work harder. If anything, oftentimes it creates this dependency because that becomes your world. And you look at other people sometimes as suckers for like, you pay that much in rent, but I get this much
Right.
off. And it
Right.
doesn't make them bad people for thinking that. It's just that you're a product of the environment that you're in. You're a product of the policies that affect you. But on the one hand, you relinquish control for an easier lifestyle, is the best way for me to put it.
Right. And I think Section 8 and some of these, what it's meant to do is to be helpful for some people. But then at the same time, like you said, it creates dependency, and then it creates you to get stuck in this bubble of, I can't make X amount of money, or I'm not going to qualify for this. So it stops you from wanting more in life, and you kind of just settle. Then you get stuck in this cycle of government assistance, and you don't look outside of that. And I think that's where it hurts you
Yeah.
down the line. Then now when your kids grow, you can pass that section over to them. So how incentivized are they going to be to
Yeah.
do something in their lives? Because if not, they're not going to qualify. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult. It's very
It's a, I've never lived through a time where I've seen, like, on a societal scale, it's like this race to be last place, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like the race to be the worst. And because people don't see incentive in being the best. Now, I don't want to say all people, just the loudest people. But
right,
you and I have also seen people who rise up, who
right,
are like, no, I'm going to work hard to be a valedictorian of my graduating class. I'm going to strive to be like that employee of the month. I'm going to try to be the best, have the best sales numbers. I'm going to try to be the best with the opportunities that I get. Like, I've shared this story before, and I've actually used this as an inspirational story when I do public presentations. Like, I remember there was this young lady. She was in foster care, and bright girl, but she was there where, stop me when this sounds familiar, where like she wasn't in the system because of anything she did. It was her parents. So she got taken away at a real young age. Her siblings, they all had to go to different foster homes. Really sad stuff, man. But her parents never worked towards reunification. But at some point she kind of knew. She's like, it's going to be on me. So what did she do? She took advantage of the Chafee grant. And for people who don't know, if you're in foster care, you get a grant that for helps you through college. To get supplies, tuition, housing if needed. Well, she maximized all of it, and there's nothing exploitive about that. This is a vulnerable population. She got her
right,
bachelor's, and she went right into grad school because the cap off is, as you know, 26. You're 26, you lose a lot of stuff, right?
yeah,
She got her master's. Dude, she's a clinician. She's a therapist now, right?
right. That's good.
All that by her 26th birthday. She graduated. Um, Wonderful student. Always gave back to the community. We assisted her on my old program with a fundraiser once because she was a coach at her old high school. But I look at that, I'm like, that's amazing. But you know what's really sad though? For every one of her, there's like 1,000 that didn't do that.
Yeah.
See? And so I have to bring that up because, people right now focus so much on the negative exceptions. I love focusing on the positive exceptions because if you're a girl or a guy, but like in foster care, but you're kind of in limbo, you don't know what to do. But then I tell you that story. I hope it inspires you to be like, I want to be like that girl, man. That's amazing, right? Maybe you don't have to study psychology. Maybe you go to engineering, which is a really
Right.
good profession, right? And so, but it should spark something in you. I mean, it's free money, but it came at a
Mhm.
cost. Let's be real. I have to acknowledge that. But it's
Right.
an opportunity you should take. Just like if you're in the military, you have the Montgomery GI Bill, you can take classes, right? Utilize it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
And it's about, yeah, those resources are there, and it's important to use them. And um, like you said, when we have kids or young people who are been in a tough situation, not because it's their fault, but because maybe what their parents decided to do. We do have these programs that are important and that are very helpful. And if, they get used correctly, then there's a good payoff at the end.
Yeah.
which is important. That we gotta continue to remind young adults of, the endless possibilities, right? What's out there, and it's not just the victim. And yes, sometimes things happens to us that beyond their control, but then it's helping them and teaching them, hey, what, there's more to life than, don't get labeled as a victim. Don't get stuck as a person who's stereotyped and can't get out of this bubble. Like, let's work hard, and how are we going to do it? Let's plan, and we're going to help you out. And I think that's what we do when we have some of these clients. When we're therapists for these clients, to help them become the better version and of themselves, and help them overcome all the adversity and the challenges that they face, because it's not going to go away. It's there, but it's about helping them, challenging them to overcome and be who they want to be.
Yeah, that's the key, man, is people have to have a vision of who they want to be, and then they got to make a strategic plan to do it. Because, like the great Herm Edwards used to say, a goal without a plan is just a wish, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's really true. And I see a lot of people that they skip that in between, right? They have this goal, but they want to skip straight to the end, right?
Right.
It's like the old video games where, like, that code and you get to the last level, but it's like, but
Uh,
then you get to the last level, but you have no experience, so nothing like that, no weapons, and
uh,
then the final boss completely kills you, it just completely annihilates you because you have no ability to beat him. Well, that's what a lot of people want in life, and unfortunately, um, they're not the ones that generally succeed. Now, don't get me wrong, the internet is really great at showcasing the exceptions to the rule. Are there some people that get a lucky break? Yes. But for every one of them, there's a tragic story about others who
right.
didn't, right? That doesn't necessarily make the news. And
Mm.
so people look at that and they have this false idea of what success looks like, because they're just like, I just need to be discovered like them. I just need a lucky break like them. Again, it's like that lottery ticket mentality. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I mean, a lot of times, are there some people that are like the anointed ones? Yes. But we're talking about a fraction of a percent, right? The rest of us actually got to go out there and scratch out a living. And some of that means hearing no a lot. And look, you
Yeah.
and I, man, we work with a lot of men, and I know like today's episode was a little unique because we really wanted to like focus on some what's real and what's out there. But I know we generally focus on what's for men. But men go through this kind of stuff. They talk about like, because I've said it before, man. Like men go to therapy. When you peel back the layers, it's two reasons: I need women, I need more money. What it comes down to. But the ones who need the most work in getting recalibrated and refocused are the ones who are just like, why can't I have this? Why can't I have that? This idea that just because I deserve it, I should get it. No doubt they deserve it. They're great. A lot of dudes are great guys. But it's not a matter of deserve. It's a matter of,
Yeah.
what are you willing to do? What work are you willing to put in to achieve what you want? Right. And I think that's a problem that I know we're gonna tackle in future episodes as well. But right now, I think it applies to what we're saying too about like, okay, what do we deserve and what are we willing to do for it, right? And so I would say, like, let's say you're right now, like you say you're one of those undocumented families where like say you're a parent, but your kids are good kids, the good kids. So in theory, they're not the ones that are going to be targeted by ICE, right? This is a really great
Right.
opportunity to be like show gratitude. And I mean, and I use that word sparingly because I don't want to say that you should be grateful to be scared, but I mean gratitude in the sense of you have safety and you have your family intact. But talk with your kids about like, look, we might have dodged that bullet because we're upstanding people. We want to be citizens. We love this country, but let's focus and let's be successful. Let's do good. Let's be the part of like the population that like Americans look at us and they're just like, man, these are good people. We don't want to get rid of them, right? And that could look like a million different ways: being a good student, getting a job, whatever, right? But I hope people are doing that. And again, I don't want people to say, "Well, why you ask us to be grateful when times are shit?" That's not what I'm talking about. I know these times are really, really rough. I'm talking about we could be grateful for just being safe. We can be grateful for having food on our table. That's what I'm talking about. Small wins, small wins. And that's what I would encourage for people, man, to not, so they don't get bogged down in this pit of fear and anxiety, because I don't want that for people, because we all know what it leads to, man. It doesn't lead to anything good.
Yeah. I mean, it's having a plan and working hard, and sometimes it takes sacrifices. I think sometimes we gotta sacrifice certain things to reach our goals, and um, you know, that's kind of my message to people right now is we might have to sacrifice here and there in order to get to that greater goal in
For
life.
sure.
So yeah, it's like I said, I think a lot of changes in LA, and some good, some bad, and some that we don't know how things are going to turn out. But what we can do is just, at the end of the day, we're going to have control of our own individual selves, and how we react to things is important. How we behave to things is important, right? Um, and making right choices and becoming a better person. Like you said, you're talking about a maybe immigrant family. It's becoming a good family. It's making sure that values are still there, that everyone's trying to be as successful as possible in the right way. So I think that's the message right now, to make sure that, I think I talked about it at the beginning, is that sometimes people lose the goal and the reason why they came here. And I think this is just kind of a reminder right now, for most of us to be like, wow, okay, I needed a reminder why I'm here, and what my goals were coming to this country.
Yeah, man. I would encourage. No, let me rephrase that. I would like to challenge the young people today. I mean, like we're talking like kids that are like 12, 13 years old, or about to enter high school, kind of. I know, like Gen Z, this new Gen Alpha, which is so horribly named. I know they're not big on hard work, and I don't necessarily just. I don't want to say that to be just insulting, but I noticed that if millennials taught us anything, it's that hard work is overrated versus smart work. Okay, like if you can do 8 hours worth of work in 2 hours, that's a good thing. You've saved people time, and you should be rewarded for that. Um, and so I would challenge this younger generation, come up with a better way. Once you get past the angst, once you get past like the whole idea of, oh, boomers and Gen X, you guys all suck, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, whatever. We say the same about them. But once you get past all of that, come up with something better. Come up with a better solution for the future, right? I mean, I got to give credit to people who try. Now, granted, sometimes they try and the ideas are horrible, but at least they're trying, right? Versus just complaining about things, right? Like, that's why I think AOC, is so popular with young people, because she's got a lot of enthusiasm. They see her as someone who at least puts forth an effort, even if you don't agree with some of her stuff, like the Green New Deal and all that, which I think the president just like repealed or whatever. But at least she's trying. I got to give her that. Like, she's passionate about what she says and does. So even if people don't agree with her, they can't deny that. See, whereas you got a lot of old heads that are in Congress and the Senate where like they get by on name and the fact that they've been there a while, but they're not really doing anything to make the future better. They might lace their own pockets with kickbacks and all that, like with big pharma, like I believe that politicians should be like NASCAR drivers, and they should have sponsorship badges on for all the money they take. That would open up a lot of people's eyes, or maybe it wouldn't. I don't know, but I'd like to know who they support. I mean, like I for example, like I feel bad for. I mean, I don't want to make this big political statement because I have friends that are Armenian, but I feel bad for them that there's certain politicians that are kind of in the pocket of Turkey, like tourism and all that, and so they have to deny like the Armenian genocide. And listen, again, I don't want to get all cultural, but I know that there's generational trauma involved, and there's this constant reminder that no, that never happened, kind of a thing. And so I think, and then pharmaceuticals, some people like don't want their kids on get certain vaccine schedules and all that. They should be able to know who they're their elected officials are. You know what I mean? And that gives them more information. More information means more control. But also, I would hope that it inspires these young people to be like, okay, I see that, and I don't want to be like that. I think there's a better way, and I think I can help create a better way. In my whole career, especially working with the homeless and all that, man, I encounter some really cool people, man, that I have to give them their flowers because they do shit that I'm like, I can't do that. And I get surprised when they tell me, how do you do what you do? I can't do what you do. I was like, well, we have different gifts. I'm more of a boots on the ground guy. And then some of these folks, they're great at creating policy, like the good people that worked at USC that did like the homeless count. I got to give them their flowers, man. They're really good at what they do. They're very caring people, but they see the big picture. And I have to give them a lot of credit. I work with some really awesome people, and I look at it like I couldn't do that, man. Maybe because I consider myself an old head, But these guys are creating these policies that they know they're not going to be perfect, but they're better than what they think that it's better than what's currently in place. They're passionate about it. They're young, and I'm like, good. That's what we need. Right. And because I always tell them, I completely stole Russell Wilson's philosophy in life, where I tell these young cats, I'm like, when you think you can't do something, you're not qualified, ask yourself, why not me? Why not me? Why can't I be a mayor? Why can't I be a lawmaker? Who's telling you can't? Find a way to make it happen. And so that's what I would encourage young people. I want to challenge you guys. Create a better system. But you need patience and you need some humility, though. But go chase it. Make it happen. Stop blaming us old heads and go out there, create something better, man. Because when they do it and it's awesome, we're going to be the first one in line cheering for them, to being like, you did it. You took on the challenge. You kicked some ass, man. I want to see that, man.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Like, hopefully, our younger generations will make some good, positive changes for the future, So we'll see.
And I know what happens because we see these feel-good stories, man, where some of these young people, man, they're creating stuff. Like some of these kids are creating scientific breakthroughs, and I'm just like thinking to myself, well, they're optimistic. I'm thinking, like, God, I hope someone gives them a chance. And then pessimistically, I'm thinking, like, God, I hope like those companies like that stand to lose money. Like, I hope this kid doesn't mysteriously disappear. You know what I mean? And I hope these ideas see the light of day, man. And it'll because it doesn't just inspire the next generation. I think it'll inspire older generations too to believe in this new generation. Because right now we have so many negative stereotypes. So yeah, man. But I just want to, as we close out this episode, I just want to, thank listeners for watching me and Herman, and please follow us on our social media, Pasadena Therapy on Instagram, but also Pasadena_therapy.com. And guys, shoot us in the comment section. Shoot us questions or topics you want us to cover. We would primarily specialize in therapy for men, but if you're a woman and you have questions about men and masculinity, and maybe you're curious, like, what's the difference between doing therapy with men and women? Because there are differences. Shoot them to us. We want to know. We want to be able to cover questions that are important to you. So, Herman, anything you want to say, man, as we close out this episode?
I know, man. I think we covered a lot. I know we didn't stay in one topic. We kind of touched different areas of what's going on. It's kind of more of a, different type of podcast today where we're just feeling out what's going on in the news. So yeah, just, if you guys have questions or you guys want something for us to discuss, like Bryan said, just send us a message.
Yeah. And hey, man, go Raiders.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
All right, man. All right. Peace, guys.
Take care. All right.